So if you've come from a family that money wasn't talked about so much, how did you educate yourself around it?
I did begin my degree with a major in finance. That definitely played a big part. Books, like the popular Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Intelligent Investor. I think COVID was a real wake-up call for myself and obviously a lot of other people. I'm born in 1999. I think that we're known to be the crisis generation. We've seen the global financial crisis to climate change and everything. There's just constantly social issues. You're just constantly being bombarded with crisis. Yeah, I think that navigating and trying to find a healthy pathway, aspiring to just be flexible and resilient in terms of my career and also, the happenings of the world.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be really cool to have a convo with you and kind of get your perspective of wealth as, I guess, someone that's right at the start of that journey so that we can kind of learn something.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So how would you define wealth?
At this point for me, I think that wealth is probably like a combination of achieving some form of financial stability, but also in the pursuit of that, not narrowing down my options in a way that I feel would limit not only just my time, but my ability to go after more personal aspects of my life, goals outside of my career, time with my family, and of course health is a very important thing to me as well. So yeah, just being able to build up financial security and stability without sacrificing too much of what other aspects of my life are kind of important to me.
Okay. And so was there a moment or an event that you're kind of like, okay, no, I actually want to be conscious about my steps towards building my wealth?
I think there were several, but I think COVID was a real wake-up call for myself and obviously a lot of other people as well. But also just being for example, I'm born in 1999. I think that we're kind of known to be the crisis generation. We've seen a lot from everything from the global financial crisis to even just even things outside of it, in terms of climate change and everything. There's just constantly almost social issues and also the business case for big companies. You just constantly are being bombarded with crisis. So it's I think that navigating and trying to find a healthy pathway while being aware of kind of the fact that people before us came and they did everything correctly by the book, but necessarily it hasn't always gotten them to where they thought it would get to. Has definitely been a learning moment for myself. So.
Okay. So what has been your first step then?
Well, to be honest, my first step, I've taken a long time to actually finish my degree and get my first job. So I've had a lot of time that I think my peer group hasn't had to just think about things like, of course, investing, but then also building up a network as well and just not being solely dependent on my career path as as the primary factor in building wealth, I think. So I think just being able to see the value in building up a network and learning from great people around me as well is, I think that's been my first step rather than necessarily getting my degree or getting a certain role in a company. So I would say that.
Okay, and so how have you gone about trying to build up your network?
Well, I think being here has been a great help. I've been exposed to some incredibly intelligent people and with very different backgrounds to myself, and different backgrounds to each other as well. So I think that quite a lot of new ideas and different walks of life and people's different approaches to building their own wealth. So I would say that that's been a pretty valuable start for myself.
Okay. And so what are you doing now to work towards that?
Career-wise? Or?
Well, so what are you doing now, career-wise, excuse me, or other, to help you get towards your wealth goals?
The next steps.
The next steps.
Oh, the next steps.
Much more put better.
I think just continuing to listen to other people's stories and everything and their own experiences, and again, understanding that everyone has a different view of wealth and where they started, and just getting other people's opinions and stuff. As well as in terms of my own career, I'll be beginning a career in insurance pretty soon, so that's a stepping stone.
Yeah, exciting.
I think the when you take on an intern anyway, it's always a bit of an interesting experience for the company. But I think what definitely stood out to us was your initiative and ability to go and do random things that we would ask and do the random research and actually come back with some some great information. And then also when you would actually give your views around like product direction, brand direction, I thought that was really valuable, especially coming from, a different perspective to other people in the room.
Right.
And I think the marketing team that we've put together have obviously a super diverse. You've got people, like yourself in your early 20s to people in their 70s. So it's been really valuable to get those insights and get that different perspective, because perspective is important. Like you say, building your network and building like a kind of mental model for how other people have approached things. It is great because you're kind of stealing from their experience, and you get to maybe avoid making certain mistakes that someone else has already kind of lived through. I mean, you're still going to make the mistakes. Everyone still makes the mistakes.
Just maybe not the same ones.
But it's just like maybe not the same ones or slightly differently. But also if you make a mistake that you've also heard that someone else has made, it also makes bouncing back much easier because you're like, oh, they dealt with it this way. So I thought, it was cool to kind of find out your perspective. Partially why we asked as well is because we've asked you really the question of what wealth means to you as a generation, but also to you personally, and what the product kind of feels like for you and what differences and changes we could make. And I thought that those are all really valuable and valid insights that we've garnered. So we thought it'd be cool to press record and put it out there, because I thought there were some pretty good perspectives for sure.
So do you have like a goal in mind of where you want to end up in terms of wealth?
I don't have like an end goal, and I don't necessarily have like super defined goals, but I think as I said about the whole crisis generation, I think resiliency and just being able to have options, I think is definitely is a goal that I would work towards. It's not necessarily like the most defined or like quantitative, there's no number to it, there's no like hard concrete sort of plan in mind, but I think that aspiring to just be flexible and resilient in terms of my career and also the happenings of the world is definitely a aspiration of mine.
I think that's the way to be though, right? Like if you've got this finite goal in mind, like you say, nobody knows what's going to happen in the world tomorrow. So that could be blown out of the water, or the, magic number you've got in your head, while it might be good for today, in 20 years time, it might be worth nothing, or it might be worth a heck of a lot more than what it is today. You just don't know.
Exactly.
And I think, your, aims around resiliency is only going to set you up really, really well. And what is an end goal anyway when you're talking about wealth? Like,
right.
People of my generation, we talk about retirement and we laugh because, 65 and you retire. By the time we get there in over 20 years, is it still going to even be a thing?
Right.
Probably not. So if that's for me, for you, you've got another 20 years on top of that. That's, could be quite a different world.
There's a couple things there, right? About disassociating, I guess, a specific number perhaps, but also I think getting to a state, right? Like you don't really have to have a specific kind of number or anything like that in mind, but in a sense, so many people have talked about it on the podcast so far about, freedom. You talk about flexibility to make sure that you're focused or you're able to achieve your goals outside of your career, that, the kind of process of needing to, shells in order to spend them, and obviously try and save some so you can build equity that will work for you over time and will change as the value of money or the value of the shells changes. Because obviously if you invest in a business, it doesn't really matter about the currency in a sense, because it's just going to transact the value of the service or product to the market. But like I try to think sometimes about like what's the ideal week look like for me,
Right.
like, because that's quite an interesting angle to look at it from as well, because it's not about necessarily anything material, but it's about, I guess, spending your time, because you can only spend that once.
Yeah.
So
you're still quite young.
Yeah.
And so I'm imagining, like, if you think about 10 years down the track,
Yeah.
how might you get them on board with your journey towards wealth? Like, is it even something you've thought about having a conversation about, or so far in the future?
Yeah, there's definitely not something I've had to really at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've seen a few of my like elder family, well, elder sounds a bit much when you're talking about like someone who's 30, but you know, some
Yeah.
of my
I take offense.
yeah, some of my family members who, you know, 5 to 10 years older than me, I have seen that it can be, I've seen particularly with the women ones, it can be a very uncomfortable conversation. In fact, I do have an older cousin who, you know, a year into dating a guy, she was quite taken aback by the fact that he asked her about how much she was earning, like just blatantly asked her, and I was taken aback that she was taken aback about that question, because
Yeah.
I'm like, it's, you guys are in one,
You've been together for a while now.
yeah, so I guess it's a very like case by case situation. I definitely wouldn't have had the same reaction that she had in that particular situation. So it's definitely something that I think about, and I think that I have a timeline around where that's appropriate in a relationship, but it's not something that I've had to worry about so far, thankfully.
Yeah.
So
But it would be something that you would want to be.
I would want to discuss it earlier rather than later. When I, you know, like when other aspects of the relationship are also secure. I think people are well within their right to start having conversations about sharing and managing finances.
Totally.
At a certain point.
Yeah.
Do you think, like in your, like, even if you think further than maybe your partner, but your circle, your friends, your social network, do you have open conversations about money and investing? Or is it something that's kind of taboo?
Interestingly, within my network of people who are in the same culture as me, India, it is quite taboo.
Yeah.
But with, you know, some of my other friends and stuff, I can see that it's almost, there's no stigma around it. And I quite agree with that approach of somewhere in between, right? If you know someone well enough, these are conversations where you should be able to just bounce ideas off each other and stuff. I think it can actually be quite helpful. Of course, you don't want to be lectured or those kinds of things, but if you can navigate that conversation without being invasive or condescending, I think that's a really helpful conversation to be having with your friends and family. So
Because I think it's really important to get other people's ideas. Just because someone's giving you advice doesn't necessarily mean that you need to take it, right?
yes, yeah, definitely.
But also, you are who you hang with, right? So
Yeah.
if you're hanging with a whole lot of people who, or for anyone, not you specifically, but if you're hanging with a whole lot of people who aren't comfortable talking about money, there's no, oh, well, I think this, you think this, why do you think that? There's no learning either, unless you're confident enough to kind of reach out further than that, whether it's podcasts or books or whatever grabs your curiosity. And then you're almost, unless you're going to go out and find those people, you're almost hindering yourself to a certain extent. So what are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. I mean, I think as the earlier that you begin it as well, the less apprehension you have when you're coming into these kinds of conversations. I mean, I think initially, like I said, culturally, I grew up in a very, like, we don't discuss money, not even within our family, not even in our household kind of thing. But so, you know, initially when I came into contact with those kinds of conversations, I was a bit like, yeah, there's almost
Taken
like
aback.
you have like a slight guard up, but then once you like realize, particularly when, you know, I was quite young and everything, and I would have like older people kind of giving me a little bit of advice and stuff. Like you said, people will give you advice. You don't necessarily have to like
Implement it.
yeah, exactly. So just being open to having those kinds of conversations, and like I said, like the earlier and everything, like that guard kind of goes down, and you realize it's not an invasive quick conversation every single time. It's not necessarily putting yourself in a position where you're going to be nagged.
Yes.
Just sometimes people just, you know, whether it's mistakes or just experience that they've gained, they just would like to share that. So
Yeah, I mean, net worth, but kind of, in a sense, I think it's obviously very personal to people. And I think that it tends to sit with the person based on who they are, either feeling like bragging almost, or alternatively maybe even a sense of not feeling like they're enough. It kind of seems to be like one or the other. And then if they're not in those two camps, then typically they might be more open about talking about it and sharing it. And it's a point in time moment, right? And what is like net worth, right? If you're just starting a new venture, like what is the value of that? Probably nothing, but obviously in the future it might look very different. It's like at the moment, I'd be really interested to get your perspective on the meme stock and Reddit Wall Street bets situation, if you're into it at all, because just it's more timely. But the guy that started the kind of craze of GameStop
Right.
is now, as of today, because of his first $50,000 investment, worth $500 million as of right now.
Wow.
And it's a very complex, and he's taken advantage of some complex derivatives and the whole situation. He's obviously benefited it from it greatly. He hasn't just bought $50,000 worth of the stock and then it's gone up 100 times. That's not what's happened. He's been very savvy, and he's used social media to benefit him personally quite dramatically. And in terms of, I guess, a legal perspective, there's a lot of scrutiny on him now.
Right.
Because, there's an argument to say that he is manipulating the stock. And he is manipulating the stock because he has figured out some technical components to how that specific stock has been handled by the market, specifically around short sellers. But it's a social movement. For him, he's obviously profited from it dramatically, but then other people I talk to about it, they are in not because of the money, which I find quite, as a market participant and quite a strong capitalist that invests for a gain, find it quite disturbing and a little bit concerning that it's more of a kind of statement rather than an opportunity to gain.
Right.
However, you also have the other side, people putting in way too much money that they probably shouldn't be, with the dream of turning $50,000 into $500 million or a ridiculous return. So like, how has has this permeated in your life at all? Like this kind of more social aspect of, I guess, investing, but like the whole meme era that we're in. I mean, everything is a meme.
Yeah. Personally, I try and stay away from. I just find that this is probably a different example of it, but yeah, I just find the whole meme internet culture, and you have to filter through a lot of
Noise.
Probably nonsense to actually get the like valuable takeaway lesson, which is probably a little bit too time consuming for me, to be honest. And I don't like to go into, especially, also like with the whole Tesla stock back in the day, like I just felt like there was too much, like you said, noise around it for me to kind of find the actual valuable part of it. So I try to stay away from those, like the whole like meme social media aspects of these kinds of things. I mean, I've even seen, like, even researching for this podcast, I was going through like Robinhood's TikTok and stuff, and it's kid stuff.
Yeah.
I'm okay without the whole meme culture coming into personal finance to be.
I totally agree. I think that it's like investing isn't get rich quick.
No,
it's like get
it's a long
rich
game.
real slow, most likely. And then, like you say, it's almost like that scrolling culture of like high dopamine, quick hits, rather than really knowing something deeply.
Yeah.
I was having this conversation with my wife the other day, and she was discussing, like you actually started the podcast, was like real social issues that exist. And I feel like potentially with this meme generation, I'd say it's a meme because like most things become memes these days. It almost has become fashionable to feel like you are out of control, and like you don't have the ability to impact your future. And I really feel like that's like a mindset that needs to be like adjusted, because my wife was talking about all of the issues that we have personally as millennials around us building wealth and getting ahead. But then on the other side, I go, well, we have access to any information that we could ever want at our fingertips, and we could go deep into that topic, as deep as we want to, really. Like, you can go and do high-level computer science degrees basically on YouTube.
Yeah.
Through a bunch of free classes and resources, you can get access to any information you want. Most data sets are available somehow. So, in some ways, yes, it's pretty uncertain because of the rate of change that we're all dealing with. However, we also have some real benefits. It's just about trying to look at it a bit differently.
Right.
Because my parents or my wife's parents may have had access to free education and may have had an easier opportunity to get on to the property ladder.
Right.
However, they didn't have access to go and get any piece of information they wanted for free at any point in time that they wanted. And it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, right? Because we have access to all this noise that gets bombarded into our faces all the time,
Right.
while also knowing that we also have access to the underlying information, which is a benefit.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you, like you say, how do you disassociate the kind of the noise from reality? And I think that's about taking more than 50 seconds to learn something,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that I talk about a lot, especially because I'm like relatively like, I mean, I enjoy short form content because it's addictive, but I try to really kind of keep it at bay because it can be motivating and helpful in some senses, depending on obviously what your algorithm feeds you, which is a completely different topic. But I really like long form content because then you can really know.
Right.
And I think that goes for anything in life as well. Like, better to really know than kind of hear the soundbite that makes you seem like you know.
Absolutely.
Come from a family that money wasn't talked about so much. How did you educate yourself around it then?
All of the free content, again, long form rather than short form.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I mean, books. There have, of course, like the popular, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Intelligent Investor.
Did you go audio or?
I flicked through all 500
school.
pages. Yeah, but yeah, I can't really, listening isn't my best way of learning. So
Okay.
reading was definitely very helpful for me. And then also I did begin my degree with a major in finance. So
Okay.
that definitely played a big part. I didn't end up following through with it, but I got the fundamentals of it. So yeah, that was an awesome way to start my degree, I would say.
So if you've got like your career's kind of launching itself off and it sounds like you're investing in that kind of thing, have you got anything else that you're kind of, if not doing now, may want to get into in the future?
To like in terms of generating wealth.
No, it doesn't have to be just passion,
Yeah.
like interests.
I think travel is like probably the best educational tool there is. That's post doing a bachelor's degree and everything, I would say. So,
Yeah.
And then also like just committing to continuing to read and podcasts are also, this is a good place to say it, but podcasts are very awesome as well. So in terms of educating yourself. So yeah, and then also one thing that I'm super conscious about as I step into my first 9 to 5 since university is just not becoming complacent and over-reliant on my job to continue to grow my ideas and even just wealth in general. Like I think it's just very important to just not just,
Have a broader view.
yeah, definitely, and just keep an open mind and everything. So
And also, like you say, like kind of becoming anti-fragile yourself as an individual, right? I think that's definitely a trend that I've seen younger people taking on board.
right.
Is like you say, not having all your eggs in one basket when it comes to your primary income, but also having other ways in which you can benefit, even if it's not monetarily initially.
Right.
Where, like example, people taking on podcasting, it's like you're not going to monetize that for a very long time, most likely, maybe if ever, depending on your objective.
Yeah.
But you're going to gain insights from the conversations and you're going to build connections that you may have never had.
Definitely.
You did mention when you were talking about kind of how you defined wealth to start with, that health is really important for you.
Yes.
So what are you currently doing to look after your health?
Gym is like primarily how I go about it, but also yoga is.
Okay.
Yoga is like, it was a very humbling experience the first time I went. Like I was like, oh no. But yeah, no, I think yoga is super important, and just staying mindful of your own body and just staying coordinated, staying flexible, staying mentally fit. I find that it actually is like the best way to start my day. I feel like I'm not even switched on sometimes if I haven't like done at least like a 15-minute stretch. But also, if I'm gonna start my day with 45 minutes of cardio, I'm much more active and in my mind as well. So I think that exercise is definitely a priority for me always.
If you had one bit of advice to give people who are starting out.
I feel like I'm the last person that
No,
should,
but I actually think maybe you're the best person to talk to because you were actually living it.
Or what have you learned in the last 6 months that you wished you learned a year prior?
That there's not one way of doing anything. There's no timeline to it as well. It's going to happen when it's supposed to happen, and if that's going to be delayed a little bit, there's so much more that you can do to just keep building yourself in the meantime. Yeah, I would say that's
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
of course.
Yeah,
no
thanks
problem.
for
Thanks for having me.
being dragged on the pod.
Yeah,
We appreciate
It
it.
was a lot more pleasant than I.
Oh, I'm glad.
We succeeded.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.